I'm joined here today by the one, the only, of course, I'm talking about the Situ-Asian, Martin Nguyen, set to take on Tan Lee at one championship. What's going on, man? How are you?
Yeah, I feel good, man. Training hard, everything's coming together. So I just can't wait to perform come October 30th.
Sure, we're glad to hear it. I mentioned your nickname off the top because I feel like I have to. Do you have pound for pound one of the best nicknames in MMA?
It's probably I get asked every day how I come up with it. It was just basically a gym nickname, and my coach at the time, when the announcer came in, he goes, "Hey, you got any nicknames?" And he said it, and then it just went on.
I mean, it's so good. It's a play on words, on everything. It really is the perfect nickname.
Thanks, man.
But so I assume every interview you do, you have to explain the origins of that nickname?
Yeah, basically. But yeah, long story short is it's obviously the situation from Jersey Shore. He's got abs. And that's what he calls the situation. Situation, sorry. And at the time, everyone was calling me the situation because I was dropping from 185 down to 145, and I was getting skinny, but I was also getting shredded. You see abs as well, and everyone was calling me a situation, and I was like, "Don't call me a situation, call me a situation," and then it just went from there.
But so at this point, that gives you extra pressure to you're always gonna have to have abs now because you have a certain nickname you got to live up to.
That's yeah. The one day I go back to
Yeah.
185, everyone's gonna be, "Are you a situation? Looks like you got a situation."
Oh no. Yeah, that can turn around on you so quick.
Real quick.
But listen, man, your last name, it's one of those names that's simple to say, but I feel like you must have went through tons of substitute teachers, even people that have completely butchered it. I mean, Nagoyan, you must have heard all that stuff. How was
Definitely.
that?
Yeah, so I know in the States they say win, as in like WIN, win.
Yeah.
Um, but in Australia, it's just, I grew up and everyone's just saying Nguyen.
Oh yeah.
So it's I don't know how the hell that sounds out Nguyen, but it's just what everyone has been saying it in Australia, and I get mixed people saying win. So I know they're from the States or not. And
Yeah.
then people who say Nguyen, I'm like, yeah, they grew up from Australia.
But so what's the best pronunciation coming from the man himself? Because obviously you are Australian, so do you have to say it Nguyen just to kind of keep it going?
New end, yeah. Because whenever people say win, all the Australian people say you're saying it wrong, and then whenever people say new end, all the Americans say, man, you're saying it wrong. So for me, I just stick to what I know, and it's new end.
I guess as long as people don't start pronouncing the G and stuff like that, it's like, you know what, close enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
For sure, man. Listen, it seems like everybody with one championship was in a long layoff, especially with COVID and everything. How was that situation for you? Were you able to train correctly? Were you able to live life, normally enough?
At the start, it was tough. Coming back, I was scheduled to fight Sunday back in April, and we were fully prepared. It was like a week and a half before we were meant to fly out for fight week, and I got told that my flight got cancelled. Australian borders were shut, were closing, and all Australians abroad had to come home as soon as possible. So I was in like an ultimatum. Am I flying out to fight? Because once I go back to Australia, they're not going to let me back out. Or do I wait in the US? But then if I waited long enough, then I'd overstay my visa, and then I wouldn't be allowed back. So it was a bit tough at the start, and then ultimately made the choice of coming back home and won championship. They canned the event, so yeah, came home. I quarantined for 2 weeks. I had my coach come over secretly, and we trained in my backyard veranda, and yeah, man, every day I've been training. I never missed a day of training. The intensity wasn't as hard as when I come over here in Florida, but it just keep the motor going. Keep the engine moving up until the time where I need to get back into camp. And sure enough, we did a pre-camp, and one championship came along and said, this is the bout, this is the date. Give you a heads up, and then the next day after I signed that contract, man, I flew over to the States, and the rest is history.
And so, what's the quarantine situation like with traveling? Like, we found out with New Zealand, they do 2 weeks quarantine when they get back. Is it the same situation with Australia, or is it a little bit different?
Yeah, so when we come back to Australia, it's mandatory 2 week quarantine in a police or health hotel. So you're not even allowed to do it at home. You got to go to a governed hotel, do the quarantine there, and you're out of pocket $3,000 to do that quarantine.
Oh wow, so you have to pay for it yourself on top of it.
Yeah, correct.
Wow, that's I mean the
Yeah,
quarantine is terrible,
I
but
said to
yeah.
my wife, "No, I ain't coming home until I fight." Um,
Yeah.
we're not at the point where we're struggling or anything like that. But I just wanted to make sure that when I come home, I want to make it uh, uh, very enjoyable for us anyway. So
Right, for sure. Let's talk about this fight a little bit. Obviously, you're taking on Tan Lee. You've known that for a long time, right? Because the fight was supposed to happen before. Well, what was your reaction originally when they came to you and told you, this was the next fight, the next championship fight?
I say, man, it's the next guy and give me the contract. I don't believe it until I have the contract in front of my face, and then once I sign it and send it away, it's legit. It's a done deal. It's going to happen. At the start of the year, I gave actually, wasn't the start of the year. Sorry, it was August last year. I gave 5 names to Chatri in regards to who I would love to fight, and Tan Lee was obviously on the list of names. After I had beaten Koyomi Mashishima, the next guy on the list was obviously Christian Lee, and that fight fell through. So Christian's on the back burner. He's doing his thing in the lightweight division. Next guy after that was Tan Lee, and I got the contract, and here we are now.
And so, what was it about Tan Lee that made you want to fight him? Is this a matchup thing? Is this potentially because he has a big name, of course, everything that happened, the Ultimate Fighter and stuff? What was it that attracted you to that matchup?
He was just a contender. That I knew that would do well in this organization, and just styles make fights, and the style that he fights and the way he fights, I'm sure we both don't need to talk trash or anything to hype up the fight. Our fighting styles and our fighting abilities talk for itself, and this is why I had him on the list. And sure enough, he won 2 fights as soon as I handed out that list, and yeah, the rest is history. We're here now.
And so, what do you think of the matchup heading into this one? Obviously, I've never heard a fighter say they don't like the matchup. I assume that's not going to be the first time we hear that today.
Nah, definitely not, man. He possesses some good skills that I believe that has made me a better athlete in training for. Now, in terms of what he possesses, it's he has world champion credentials. So every fighter that I take on, they all have world champion credentials. It's just a matter of whether they can pull the trigger or not. And for me, I just worry about myself. Um, Make sure I train to my abilities and make sure I perform to the best of my abilities to retain my crown.
And so we saw a big knockout this past weekend. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it because this matchup is interesting. We saw the Buckley knockout, right, where he had the spinning kick and stuff like that.
How crazy was that?
Do you think that's got to be the best knockout ever? People are saying knockout of the year, all that stuff, or do you think there's a little bit of recency bias?
Yeah, I think still a bit early to say knockout of the year, but it's definitely a creative one and definitely up there when it comes to knockouts of the year.
And so the big thing people are saying is that we're gonna see more people attempt that, right? Like when people catch kicks, they're gonna want to try to spin and stuff. You're facing a Taekwondo guy known for his kicks. Does that knockout change anything about maybe catching the kicks or doing things differently, or not at all?
Nah, man, not at all. I just think it was just a very unfortunate situation. Um, and if he had done that, 5 times out of 10, it would probably only land once. It was just one of those moments that you're in, and that he caught his opponent off guard. And yeah, the rest is history, man. It was just one of those times, man.
But while we're talking about the greatest knockout, and it's a very tough question, but for you, off the top of your head, what's like your favorite, the best knockout you think you've ever seen?
The best knockout that I've ever seen would, oh man, I've seen plenty my whole life.
Right.
Yeah, but there was this one, this Russian guy that done like he went for a 1-2 and his opponent moved back about 3-4 steps and he came forward with like a shuffle kick, uh, turned the lights out. I was very impressed with that. But it was on like a lower show, not like a bigger organization show. But man, that's forever indented into my memory.
For sure. Is that something we're ever gonna see you attempt, or is that a certain level of
Nah,
difficulty?
man, I just keep it simple, man. I just
Right.
keep it simple.
This fight with Tan Lee, I feel like there's a lot of hype behind it because of the matchup. Like you mentioned, there's not a whole lot of trash talk. I wouldn't expect you guys to, but is it fair to say you've seen a lot of hype heading into this one?
I just man, it's just like every other fight, man. Anyone that I fight, it's just they're as I said, they have world champion credentials and their fighting styles and the way they fight and their momentum coming into the fight, speaks for itself. We don't have to talk trash. I've never had to talk trash my whole life. It was just a matter of going in there and performing and people liking the way I perform and they follow and the rest is history, man. Like it's just our abilities to fight and our abilities to win fights, and having the will to win is what attracts the fans to come in and watch us.
So you mentioned never having to talk trash. Would there ever be a situation where your opponent could potentially bring out that side of you? Could get, we get the wild McGregor press conference throwing the monster cans. Could we ever see that? Would there be a situation?
Not me, man. I'll laugh at the situation and I'll make him pay for it inside the cage.
There we go. Listen, one last question for you. I'm sure you've heard it a million times, but how do you see yourself getting your hand raised against Tan Lee?
Any way possible, wherever the fight goes. I don't like to call predictions. I just like to take the fight as it is, and wherever God may grant me the W, I'll take it with two hands.
All right, well, there we go. We look forward to it. It's going to be a great fight, obviously. You know that. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sham. No worries. Thank you.